Hey guys, this is Jenna with Hill Valley Farm, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about performance programs and what they look like in your herd. Whether your goats are registered with American Dairy Goat Association, which is ADGA, or AGS, which is American Goat Society, both registries have performance programs. Now, it's wonderful. We love to show our goats and see how they do in the ring and see how they do better and better. But also with performance programs, it's even better because it looks at the individualized goat. So I want to kind of walk you through what we do in our herd with our registries. Okay, so there are really three major categories in performance programs. And the first one is DHIR, which stands for Dairy Herd Improvement Registry. And that's simply a very fancy name for milk testing. So there's all kinds of labs throughout the United States, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about milk testing. I just kind of want to touch base on the highlights, and because I really want to focus today on LA. So in milk testing, there's a couple different options you can do. Well, there's many options. But I want to really kind of hone in on two, and one is a one-day milk test versus a full lactation milk test. So a one-day milk test, it's wonderful, it's great, especially if it's a really good day for your goat and she's got some really nice numbers and she can score in one day, she can earn her milk star in one day. However, the parameters are very high for one-day milk stars. It can definitely be done, but I tend to not want to do that in my herd. I really prefer to look at a full lactation, because instead of giving you just a little snippet of what this doe can do on a one-day milk test, for a full lactation test, it's going to show you what the doe is looking like very close to freshening, after freshening, what her peak looked like, and then how she kind of went down and plateaued and what it looked like throughout the rest of her lactation. It's very helpful. A lot of people are so confused about milk testing. They think that you have to milk twice a day to be on milk test, and that is just not true. Obviously, if you want the volume, you're going to want to milk twice a day throughout that full lactation. But for some of us who have first fresheners, and we see early on we're really not going for the volume, you can just go to your once a day milking eventually sometime in the summer or whenever, late fall, and do the once a day milking and then do your milk testing. So it's not like you have to do these certain things in order to do milk tests. So milk testing is really cool because the doe can earn a milk star. And that's really fun. There's many different ways in which she can earn it. And so again, I don't really want to go into all that right now, but also a sire can be awarded a milk star as well through the production of his daughters. And so that's a really cool thing. So milk testing is one part of the performance programs. Okay, a second part to a performance programs, and I say that because we are an ADGA Plus herd. When you sign up for ADGA Plus, you sign up for the three performance things, which the first one is milk test, the other one is linear appraisal, and that's the second one I want to touch base on, and the third one is DNA testing. So linear appraisal, also known as LA. You will see that acronym everywhere if you're on any type of breeders page on Facebook, anything to do with ADGA. LA is a really big deal, and the reason why is it is a scoring system, and it scores the individual goat, whether it be a doe or a buck, and against the ideal goat. Now they have a scorecard, and so you sign up, and either an appraiser comes out to your farm or you go to someone who is hosting. It's a host herd, and you will go there and the appraiser will be there and they will appraise your goats. And so they give a score, and I'll go over that here in just a little bit with an actual scorecard and what it looks like. and they will compare, you know, like I said, your goat, stack them against the ideal goat. Now, in a show ring, you're being compared to the does or bucks in that ring only. You're not being, there is a scorecard, and they know, you know, certain things matter more than others on like a general appearance, memory, that kind of thing. But you are being judged against the goats in that ring at that time on that day. LA is comparing you to the perfect and ideal goat. Now, the highest number obtainable in LA is 100. There has never been, nor will there ever be, a 100 awarded to a goat, because the ideal and perfect goat does not exist. And so, but that's what you're striving for. You're striving for the higher numbers. If you know anything about LA or have seen these funky scores that might look like VEEV 90 or VEV 88, that kind of number, that kind of thing, that's what I'm talking about. That is a LA score. And so there's different parts to that. The V and the E and the E and the V, they all stand for, they all have their own category, and the number is how close you got to 100. So anyways, you can do that with bucks and does. There used to be a young stock program, and I'm only going to speak on what we did this year. So this year I was mailed my list of does in my herd, and you know, sometimes it had one that I had sold, so she's not in my herd anymore, so I had to kind of update my list for ADGA to know numbers for LA. The does that we took were, you had to take every doe that had ever freshened in your herd, except for, the only exception was if you had a doe that is 8 years or older, you could just have them exempt from the list and not take them. Our Mayflower is 8 years old. She doesn't go to shows and she doesn't travel, and I just feel like it would stress her out more than it would even help us. And so, and I've pretty much retired her, so I just left her at home. But everyone else that had ever freshened in her herd went. And so, like Elfwin, for instance, she was able to get scored as a dry doe. The reason she was able to do that is because she had some mammary tissue there that the appraiser could look at and feel and be able to score her. So that is really, really cool. So every doe that had ever freshened on our farm got to go. Plus, you could choose to take bucks. The bucks had to be 1 year or older. And so we chose to take Recall, and he was scored. And so that's, you know, what happened with our herd. I can't even remember how many does I ended up taking, but the ones that had freshened that were dried up that could not be scored, she would just say not able to score, you know, and then we would move throughout and score the ones who could be scored. So LA is just, it's a really, really handy tool, because let's say you have a really nice buck, he's got some really nice attributes, but he needs some help in the top line department, like in his brisket. Well, then you kind of get a general appearance, and looking at a doe with, like, has some really nice dairiness to her, really good brisket extension and top line, and you might maybe pair them together, or this one's legs were better than this one's. Like I had, you know, I know Rocket's legs are not as great as Recall's, but Karma's legs are really excellent. So I paired Karma with Rocket this year. And, you know, that's just something that I thought of. And that would help, because you're always breeding to be better. And so that's really, LA helps a lot in that. It also shows you how good the daughters are of sires. And that's one thing that the appraiser really wanted to point out this year is, you know, we appraise them, we score them, and these does really can show off the sire and what he produced with this other doe. So LA is a very, very helpful tool. Now, the third thing in performance program is DNA. DNA testing is just a hair follicle, and it is identification for that particular animal. On this farm, we have used the DNA for our bucks, and there's been a while, ADGA has been messed up with the new generation software, but I know there was a little bit where we could not even do DNA. I need to look it up now because I'd like to go ahead and do my DNA for this year, but I use it for my bucks. And so any buck that I've had on my farm, I've always DNA'd them, and it proves who their parents are, and it's really a good tool to have. And it will say on the registration papers, like on rockets, it says Vista Oaks Rocket, and it'll have a star DNA on it, and that's just telling you that this buck has had DNA testing. He is who he says he is, who these papers say he is, and that's what the DNA is for. So I don't really get a whole lot into DNA. I do it for my herd just because it's there and it's handy. When you sign up as an ADGA plus herd, you get 3 free DNA tests, and so you can go ahead and send those in. And so I probably need to do mine for this year, but I really focus on the milk testing and linear appraisal. Now, there is a website that you can go to look up, and it kind of puts all the data together, and that is adgagenetics.org. It is a really helpful tool. You can look at milk testing on there for the does. If you're looking at a buck, you can pull up his dam's milk test scores or milk test values, as long as she's been milk tested. And now on ADGA, you could pull up the linear appraisal scores. You can't right now. I hope that's coming. It's very frustrating to those who are really interested in it, but you can, I'm pretty sure, pull it up on ADGA Genetics as well. The other cool thing that you can do on that ADGA Genetics website is pull up different pedigrees, and you can also like plan pairings, like breedings, and on the software. And so you can put this buck with this doe and see like certain values that they would bring up in their kids. So it's very helpful, and I highly recommend the adgagenetics.org tool. It's phenomenal, and it's something that I'm always looking at and pulling up. So with that said, thank you for watching. I want to go ahead and go through like LA and what we got in our herd for our LA scores this year, and what we're looking towards next year. So now we're going to break it down. Why do linear appraisal? Linear appraisal, again, is a helpful tool in learning about different parts of what a good dairy conformation looks like, and why each part is important to produce not only a healthy, productive dairy goat, but to produce one who can produce freshening after freshening throughout its life and remain sound. It's very helpful when trying to make breeding decisions, since it provides specific scores for heritable traits. Here we have the American Dairy Goat Association Linear Appraisal Report. In this report, there are 4 parts to this to get your final score. The first part is linear traits. There are 15 linear traits: stature, dairiness, rump angle, and width, just to name a few. Also, you will note that the mammary traits are in this part. Now, while observing all parts, the appraiser will view the goat stationary and on the move. Unlike in a show ring, you are not allowed to set up the goat. On the ADGA website, they have a list of pictures for the scorecard for you to get an idea of what these traits should look like, or what the parameters for these traits are, and why you get the number you get. So definitely check that out. The second part of the scorecard are the structural categories. There are 8 structural categories, and they are each assigned a score of either poor, fair, acceptable, good plus, or excellent. The third part of the scorecard are the major categories, and this is where it gets really interesting. General appearance, also known as GA, dairy strength, body capacity, and mammary. They get the scores just like the structural: poor, fair, acceptable, good plus, or excellent. The fourth and final part to the scorecard is the final score. The final score is what becomes the animal's record, used to develop sire summary information. The final score represents how each individual animal comes close to the ideal goat. Each major category contributes to the final score based on percentages in each category. General appearance is 35%, dairy strength is 20%, body capacity is 10%, and mammary is 35%. Now, because bucks do not have mammary system, it's a little different in the scoring for them and young stock, even though they did not do young stock this year. For bucks and young stock, general appearance counts as 55%, dairy strength is 30%, and body capacity is 15%. This is what I call the grade card. It's on the far right corner of the Linear Appraisal Scorecard. These numbers help determine what the final letter will be, whether it be excellent, very good, good plus, acceptable, fair, or poor. You may have seen on a final LA score a plus sign. When you see that, that is evidence of the good plus score, 80 to 84. The age of the animal when appraised should be identified as well. That is because young does change dramatically as they mature. A first freshener is limited in what they can score. The highest first freshener score obtainable is VVVV89. As she matures, her udder develops, and the V in mammary can easily change to an E. Scores tend to go up as they age until around 4 to 7 years of age. So how did our herd do in their first linear appraisal? In this next segment, I will list all the goats that got appraised and their scores with their ages. First up, we have Corey's Fancy Tea Elfwin, 3-star M, and on her score it says LA, which is linear appraisal. She was scored in her 7th year, so she was 7 years and 3 months of age, and she scored a VEE plus 88. Now, broken down, that means she got a very good in general appearance, an excellent in dairy strength, and excellent in body capacity, and she was coated dry because she has been dry for over a year. So she earned a plus in mammary because she is dry. I look forward to having her appraised when she is in milk, and her final score is 88, which we were very happy with. Next up is Corey's Fancy Tea Irma. She was 7 years old and 2 months at the time of this year's appraisal. She scored a VEEV 87, so this means a V in general appearance, excellent in dairy strength, excellent in body capacity, and very good for her mammary system with a final score of 87. Again, we were very happy with this score as well. Next up, we have Rolling Meadows BB Godiva, who we also call Lily, 2-star M Advanced Registry. On her appraisal date, she was 5 years old and 8 months, and her score was plus VVV84. So she got a good plus in general appearance, a very good in dairy strength, a very good in body capacity, and a very good in mammary, with a final score of 84. While this is decent, I know that this girl can do better, so I do look forward to having her appraised again. Next is Rolling Meadows J Mary Mercy, 2-star MAR pending. On her linear appraisal, she was 3 years exactly. She scored a good plus in general appearance, a good plus in dairy strength, a very good in body capacity, and acceptable in mammary with a final score of 82. I wanted to show you Mercy's udder. I do not agree with her score of an A, acceptable in mammary. I thought it should be at least a very good, but she is a first freshener, and so she was coded that her teats point out. Here, I just see the left one pointing out, not so much the right one. So on Mercy, we will just plan to watch her grow and get her appraised again. Again, she was a first freshener, and I know that those teats can tend to point out and will eventually point down. I've been told by some really good breeders. So that is Mercy. Next up was the Hill Valley's the Karmic Glory, also known as Gloria, in our herd. When she was appraised, she was 2 years and 6 months, and she appraised with VVVV89, which is actually the highest score that a first freshener can obtain. She got the V in general appearance, V in dairy strength, V in body capacity, and V in mammary. This is very exciting because this tells me that we are on the right track with our young stock. She was a first freshener, and she is the first Fields of Grace, Z Zambra, also known as Hiram daughter, to be appraised in our herd. So this is very, very exciting, and we are so happy about Gloria. Next was Rolling Meadows, Lady Liberty, 2-star MAR, which is pending. When she was appraised, she was 1 year old and 10 months. Her final score was a good plus in general appearance, very good in dairy strength, very good in body capacity, and acceptable in mammary, with a final score of 82. Liberty, as you know, if you watched our last video on breeding plans, was scored or coded with a tilted udder, which is considered a defect in a dairy goat. Not only did the appraiser say she had a tilted udder, but it's kind of displaced a little forward. Because of this, and because we don't want to be passing on defects, Liberty has found a new home, and it is with a wonderful person who actually has purchased 2 of our goats in the past. So we are really excited that she has found such a great home to go to. Last but not least, we had one of our bucks, Vista Oaks Recall, appraised. On appraisal date, he was 1 year old and 5 months. He appraised at VVV87. So with a buck, remember, he does not have a mammary system, so he appraised a V in general appearance, a V, which is very good again, in dairy strength, and very good in body capacity, with a final score of 87. For a young buck, I really, really was impressed with this score with him. The appraiser really liked him, and looks forward to seeing him mature. So that was really exciting. So we were very happy with Recall. So while Linear Appraisal does not show anything in the way of milk production or show wins, it is a very helpful tool in knowing where your herd stands compared to the ideal goat. It also helps for breedings for your future generations and determining what you need in your herd to work on. It is a lot of information, but we have just scratched basically the surface, and I hope this helps you. And I hope it also helps you decide to also do linear appraisal and performance programs in your herd.